They kicked him out in the snow, never imagining the seal and his dog would uncover a 195 secret buried under a frozen mountain. He had nothing left to his name when his in-laws threw him into the cold, until his loyal K9 led him to a round wooden door carved into the mountainside. What waited beyond that frozen Hobbit cabin would rewrite everything he thought he'd lost. Snow drifted across the long stone driveway like white smoke, carried by a wind sharp enough to cut bare skin. Cole Matthews stood in the middle of it all, breath rising in shaky clouds as he watched the last of his belongings get tossed into the cold. Black garbage bags, his clothes, his tools, his medals, landed with hollow thuds at his feet. A lamp he and Hannah bought their first year together shattered when it struck the ice. Cole didn't move. He felt frozen from the inside out, colder than the night around him. Ranger, his German Shepherd K9 partner, pressed against his leg, muscles tight and ears forward. Every time a door slammed or a voice rose, Ranger shifted protectively, reading danger in every sound. Cole lifted a trembling hand and touched the dog's head, grounding himself the way Ranger had done for him through firefights, explosions, and sleepless nights overseas. Above them, the porch lights of the Carrington estate burned bright like interrogation lamps. Judith Carrington stood at the top of the steps, arms crossed over her fur-lined coat, face carved into an expression that held no warmth, no grief, only bitterness. Her husband had been dead for years. Her daughter, Cole's wife, had been gone for 6 months. Somehow Judith acted as though Cole had taken them both. "We are done here," Judith said, her voice sharp enough to carry over the wind. "My daughter is gone. And you," she pointed at him as though he were something unclean. "You were a burden she carried. Not anymore." Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't trust his voice. Ranger growled low, just once, sensing the strain. Judith stepped closer. "You're not part of this family. You never were. A Navy SEAL with no money, no class, and a broken mind. Hannah married beneath herself, and we all knew it." Cole felt the words like gravel hitting an old wound. For months after Hannah's death, he had held on to the Carringtons because they were all he had left of her. Now he realized, maybe too late, that they had only tolerated him while she lived. The butler, Mr. Alden, avoided Cole's eyes as he set the final box down near the gate. Judith snapped her fingers. "Lock it!" The iron gates began to swing shut with a low groan. Ranger barked, muscles coiling, unsure if this movement meant threat. Cole knelt beside him, one hand gripping the thick fur at Ranger's shoulders. "It's okay," Cole whispered, though nothing about this was okay. Judith's voice cut in again. "Take your dog and go. You're trespassing now." Cole swallowed, tasting metal. He had nowhere to go, no apartment left, no savings after medical bills, and no clear future. The VA paperwork was still tied up in delays. His discharge had come fast, too fast for him to prepare, and Hannah's passing had hollowed him out in ways he still didn't understand. He bent to gather the garbage bags. His fingers stiffened in the cold, and pain flared in his shoulder. The old injury, from the blast in Helmand Province. Ranger carried one smaller bag in his teeth, staying close, tail low but steady. Cole turned toward his truck parked near the gate, its engine barely running in the cold. The snow hammered the windshield, swirling in dizzying sheets. He hesitated, tightening his grip on a worn scrap of paper tucked inside his jacket pocket. Hannah's handwriting. The last thing she had ever left him. "Cole," she had written, "one day I want to show you something. My grandfather's cabin. The one with the round door. It's hidden in the mountains. It was always my safe place." He read it on nights when the house felt too big and the silence too loud. Now it felt like the only direction he had left. Behind him, Judith called out one final time, voice full of triumph rather than grief. "Stealing our daughter's memory won't work on me. You don't belong here. You never did." Cole didn't look back. He opened the truck door, and Ranger jumped inside first, shaking the snow from his coat. Cole followed, setting the bags in the back seat. The truck engine sputtered, threatening to die. The heater blew nothing but cold air. Cole rested his forehead on the steering wheel, breath shaking, the weight of the moment heavy enough to crush him. Ranger nudged his arm, offering comfort in the way only he could. "Yeah," Cole whispered hoarsely. "I know. We'll figure it out." He looked once more at the house where he had loved Hannah, where they had celebrated Christmases and birthdays and quiet mornings. Judith stood in the doorway, arms still crossed, victorious in her cruelty. Cole shifted the truck into gear and drove into the storm. The gate clanged shut behind him, loud, final, merciless. By the time the estate disappeared in the rearview mirror, he wasn't Cole the son-in-law anymore. He wasn't Cole the seal. He wasn't even Cole the widower. He was just a man with a dog, a broken truck, and a fading map to a forgotten cabin somewhere in the mountains. And tonight, in the middle of a Colorado winter, that would have to be enough. The wind rattled the old pickup as it crawled down the dark county road, headlights cutting through the heavy snow like tired flashlights. The heater coughed weak air, barely warmer than the storm outside. Cole's breath fogged the inside of the windshield faster than he could wipe it away. Ranger lay across the bench seat, one paw on Cole's thigh, eyes flicking from him to the empty road ahead. The radio crackled with static, then finally caught a signal long enough for a robotic voice to announce a winter storm warning. Blizzard conditions, road closures in higher elevations, all non-essential travel discouraged. Cole let out a humorless breath. "Guess we're non-essential now," he murmured. Ranger tilted his head as if agreeing with the unfairness of it all. When the truck sputtered near a lonely pull-off beside a closed bait shop, Cole guided it beneath a flickering street lamp and cut the engine before it died on its own. Snow tapped steadily against the windshield, building in soft drifts against the tires. With nothing else to do, Cole reached inside his jacket and pulled out the folded, weathered note. Hannah's handwriting was still gentle, still curved and careful, the way she always wrote little reminders or grocery lists for him. His chest tightened as he unfolded it. "Cole, I want to show you something someday. Something my grandfather built. A place he called Hale's Haven, hidden in the mountains, tucked behind a round wooden door. It was my childhood safe place. I think it could be ours someday, too." There were small doodles drawn in the corner. Mountains, a crooked tree, a circle meant to be the door. Her sketches always made him smile. Now they only deepened the ache. Cole traced the letters with his thumb. "You were trying to tell me something," he whispered, "and I never listened close enough." Ranger crawled closer, pressing his head beneath Cole's hand. In the low lamplight, the dog's eyes looked almost human. Warm, steady, patient. Cole let himself lean back, letting Ranger's presence ground him the way no medicine ever had. He unfolded the second page, Hannah's simple map. Pencil lines traced a rough logging road branching off Highway 62, climbing into an area marked only with question marks. Beside it, she'd written, "If you ever need a place to breathe, go here." The first tear caught Cole off guard. It slid off his jaw and landed on the paper, darkening a small corner of the map. He wiped it quickly, as though Hannah might still be able to see him mishandle her last gift. He closed his eyes and saw her again, laughing in their kitchen, tapping her finger on this very map. "It's silly," she'd said once. "Grandpa said the cabin looks like something out of a movie. You'd love it." And now she was gone. Buried too young, taken too fast, and Cole had nothing left to hold except these pages and the dog she used to spoil with treats. The The snow outside thickened, the storm pushing hard against the windows like invisible hands. Cole folded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the pocket over his heart. The heat in the truck was fading. Ranger shivered once, and Cole immediately reached across the seat to pull an old wool blanket over him. "We're going," Cole said softly. "If this is the last place you wanted me to see, then that's where we're heading." He turned the key. The engine choked, then caught with a weak rumble. Ranger lifted his head, ears alert. They pulled back onto the road, the tires slipping slightly on the ice. Cole gripped the wheel with both hands, pulse steadying with purpose. He followed the highway north, guided by the failing headlights and Hannah's worn pencil lines. At a lonely intersection marked only by a leaning signpost and an abandoned gas pump, Cole pulled over again. Snow clung to the windows in thick sheets. He stepped outside and let the storm sting his face awake. The air smelled like pine and cold metal. He walked to the front of the truck, leaning heavily on the hood. "You picked this for a reason, Hannah," he murmured. "You knew they'd never accept me. Maybe you knew I'd need somewhere to start over." Behind him, Ranger barked once, short, urgent. Cole turned. The dog stood at the passenger window, tail still, gaze fixed on Cole as though urging him onward, as though he too believed the cabin was the only path left. Cole climbed back in, took one last look at the map, and turned onto the narrow access road where the plows had stopped hours earlier. Snow swallowed the truck's tracks almost instantly. Ahead lay darkness, mountains, and the place his wife had dreamed of sharing with him. Behind him lay the Carrington estate, locked gates, and a life that had closed without warning. Cole pressed down on the gas. The truck crawled forward. He wasn't sure if he was chasing Hannah's memory or running from everything else, but for the first time since her funeral, he felt a flicker of direction. Ranger shifted closer, leaning against Cole's arm as the storm swallowed them whole. The road narrowed into a twisting ribbon of ice, disappearing beneath the falling snow faster than the headlights could reveal it. Cole leaned forward, gripping the wheel until his knuckles blanched. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth in a frantic rhythm, struggling to keep the glass clear. The storm grew heavier with every mile, as though the mountains themselves were trying to push him back. Ranger stood with both front paws braced on the console, watching the swirling white through the windshield. His ears twitched with every gust of wind that rocked the truck. Cole felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the early stages of panic, the kind that never fully left after Afghanistan. He took a deep breath, then another. Ranger nudged his arm gently, sensing the shift. "I'm okay," Cole whispered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Just keep me honest, buddy." The storm roared louder, drowning out the steady hum of the engine. Cole forced his eyes to track the faint tire ruts already half buried by drifting snow. Every few seconds, the world outside vanished completely, leaving him blind in a tunnel of white. His heart kicked against his ribs. The sudden loss of visibility sent him spiraling into old memories. Dust storms in Helmand, ambushes hidden behind shifting sand walls, the crack of gunfire where nothing should move. Ranger barked once, snapping Cole out of the flashback. Cole blinked hard, willing the present to return. "Thanks," he breathed. "I needed that." The truck climbed higher into the Rockies, engine straining, tires slipping on the incline. Cole checked the map again, balancing it on his knee. Hannah had drawn the access road as a barely there line, looping around a ridge before cutting sharply toward a valley. He glanced out the window at towering pines bent beneath the weight of snow, their branches creaking in the wind. A sudden bang jolted the truck, metal striking rock. The front tire skidded, dragging the vehicle toward the edge of the narrow trail. Cole fought the wheel, heart hammering as the truck fishtailed, gravel spraying into the darkness below. Ranger lunged sideways to keep himself upright. After several tense seconds, the truck stabilized. Cole exhaled shakily. This truck's on its last prayer. He wasn't wrong. A grinding noise rumbling beneath the hood grew louder with every mile. The temperature gauge crept toward red. Steam hissed from somewhere deep within the engine. Still, he pushed forward. Half an hour later, the road curved sharply, leading into a dense corridor of pines. The wind shifted direction, funneling through the trees in long, mournful howls. Snow clung to the mirrors, dulling the world to a gray haze. Ranger's ears suddenly pricked straight up. He turned toward the passenger window, then toward Cole, whining softly. "You smell something?" Cole asked. Ranger answered with a low growl, not aggressive but wary. Cole peered out but saw nothing beyond the storm. Instinct told him to trust Ranger. The dog had saved him more than once overseas by noticing danger long before human eyes could. But stopping now risked getting stranded. Another mile crawled by. Then the truck lurched violently and sputtered. The lights flickered. Cole pumped the gas, but the engine coughed like a dying animal. A final metallic clank echoed beneath them, and then silence. The truck coasted a few feet before rolling to a stop on the snowy incline. "No," Cole whispered. "Not now." He tried the ignition again. The engine turned once, twice, then died completely. Ranger whined, pacing across the seat as the temperature inside began to drop rapidly. Cole rested his forehead on the steering wheel, breathing in slow, uneven pulls. The storm outside raged with no sign of letting up. The isolation pressed in, the silence between wind gusts too close to the suffocating quiet he remembered from after the blast overseas. Ranger nudged his arm again, insistent. Cole lifted his head, looking at the map. According to Hannah's rough drawing, the cabin lay somewhere ahead, maybe 2 or 3 miles, maybe less. Her grandfather had chosen a location nobody would ever stumble onto by chance. Cole stared at the snow-covered forest. The path was barely visible, but it existed. "We don't have another choice," he murmured. He opened the glove compartment and pulled out a flashlight, the beam weak but still alive. He zipped his coat higher, checked his boots, and slung his old military pack over his shoulder. Ranger hopped out first, landing in snow nearly up to his chest. Cole stepped out after him, the wind slashing across his face like icy knives. The cold stole his breath instantly. He inhaled sharply, forcing his body to adjust. The snow muffled every sound except the storm, turning the world into a pale, howling void. Ranger led the way, nose low to the ground, moving with purpose. Cole followed closely, each step sinking deep. Within minutes, his legs burned from the effort. He checked the compass, northwest, just like Hannah marked. Minutes stretched into an hour. Cole couldn't tell how long they'd truly been walking. The storm distorted everything, distance, time, even his thoughts. His mind slipped again, dragging him back to Afghanistan's blinding storms of dust and smoke. He blinked hard, steadying his breath. "Stay with me," he muttered to himself, shaking his head. Ranger returned to his side and pressed against him for a moment, anchoring him to the present. Cole inhaled the dog's warm scent. Snow, pine, loyalty. It worked better than any grounding technique a therapist had ever given him. The wind suddenly shifted, revealing a faint break in the trees. Ranger barked sharply, tail stiff. Cole lifted the flashlight and froze. A shape sat half buried under the snow, rounded, wooden, something that didn't belong in the wilderness. His heart pounded. Hope, wild, impossible hope, surged through him. "Ranger, is that—" Ranger barked again, louder this time, and started forward. Cole stumbled after him, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. Through the white curtain of snow, the impossible shape came into full view, a round door carved into the hillside, just like Hannah had drawn. For a long moment, Cole could only stare. Snow swirled around the wooden circle embedded in the mountainside, half buried beneath a thick drift. The door looked ancient and impossible at the same time. Weathered oak planks bound by dark metal bands, framed by stones set so precisely they seemed grown rather than placed. Above the arch, faint beneath the frost, were carved words: Hale's Haven, 1971. Ranger bounded forward, tail raised but cautious, sniffing along the door's lower edge. The dog's breath puffed into tiny clouds, his nose brushing the seams as if searching for the heartbeat of the place. Cole stumbled through the snow after him, each step heavier than the last, not from the storm, but from the flood of emotion rising inside him. "This is real," he whispered. Hannah wasn't just daydreaming. She knew. His gloved hands trembled as he brushed snow away from the carved letters. The wood beneath was smooth, almost warm, despite the freezing air. Cole pressed his palm to the surface, half expecting it to pulse with some hidden energy. Instead, the cold bit into his skin, reminding him of the storm clawing at his back. Ranger barked sharply, circling to the left side of the door, where a heavy iron latch jutted out beneath a small overhang. Cole grasped the latch, the metal shockingly cold, and pulled. It didn't budge at first, frozen in place by years of storms. He braced one boot against the stone frame and heaved again, teeth clenched. Something cracked, not loudly, but enough for him to feel it through the metal. He repositioned and pulled once more with everything he had left. The latch gave. The door shuddered inward, cracking the ice that sealed its edges. Warm air, real, gentle warmth, poured across Cole's face like the breath of a living place. Ranger whined softly, tail lowering in awe. Cole pushed the door further. It creaked open slowly, revealing a golden glow inside, soft and steady, as though lanterns had been lit moments before they arrived. He stepped over the threshold, Ranger keeping pace at his heel. The interior stole his breath. The cabin was circular, carved with meticulous craftsmanship. Curved wooden beams arched overhead like the ribs of an old ship. The walls blended stone and timber with seamless artistry. A round window looked out into the snow, its glass fogged slightly from the warmth inside. A small wood stove glowed from a corner, its heat strong though no fire burned visibly within. A hand-woven rug lay across the floor, colors muted but intact. Shelves lined the walls filled with books, tools, journals, and trinkets covered in a fine layer of dust. Everything looked untouched yet perfectly preserved, like a memory frozen in time rather than a structure abandoned. Cole shut the round door behind them, sealing out the storm. Silence settled around them like a blanket, still, warm, protective. Ranger shook off the snow clinging to his coat, then wandered forward, nose twitching as he took in the scents. Cole dropped his pack and slid to the floor, leaning against the curved wall. The warmth soaked into his bones, thawing fingers stiff with cold. A laugh, small, choked, disbelieving, escaped him. "Hannah, you actually meant this place." His gaze drifted to a framed picture on a low table. A young girl, Hannah at maybe 9 or 10, stood smiling beside an elderly man with bright eyes and wild, unkempt hair. Behind them, the very round door Cole had just opened. His heart clenched. She had been here, often. She had grown up walking through this very space, touching these shelves, sitting on that hand-carved bench near the stove. This wasn't random. This wasn't a footnote in her past. This was something she had wanted to share with him. Ranger wandered toward a large braided rug in the center of the room. He sniffed it, then pawed it once, then again, more insistently. Cole frowned. "What is it, boy?" Ranger barked and dug at the rug, pulling it back several inches to reveal the wooden boards beneath. Cole's pulse quickened. He crouched beside Ranger and lifted the rug fully. There, set into the floor, was a rectangular outline. barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. He pressed along the edges until his fingers found a recessed iron ring hidden beneath the wood grain. A trapdoor, Cole murmured. He hesitated, glancing toward the photo again. Elias Hale, Hannah's grandfather, engineer, war veteran. Brilliant, eccentric, secretive. What had he built down there? A gust of wind shook the cabin, reminding Cole of the storm they had escaped. He inhaled deeply, gripping the ring. Ranger braced beside him, silent but alert. Cole lifted. Warm air surged up from below, warmer even than the room. A faint hum echoed up the spiral opening, a mechanical sound so old and steady it felt like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. A staircase spiraled down, carved through what looked like enormous tree roots fused into the earth. Lantern light, dim and flickering, illuminated only the first few steps before darkness swallowed the rest. Cole's pulse thudded in his ears. Ranger looked at him, waiting. "This," Cole whispered, voice shaking. "This is what Hannah wanted me to find." He grabbed a lantern from the shelf and lit it with the striker beside it. The flame flared softly, then steadied, casting warm gold across the hidden stairwell. Cole looked once more at the photo of Hannah and her grandfather. "I'm going down," he said quietly. "Come on, Ranger." Ranger descended first, confident and unafraid. Cole followed, lantern in hand, stepping into the depths beneath the cabin, into Elias Hale's secret. The door above creaked shut behind them, sealing out the storm. The spiral staircase wound downward, carved into a tunnel of massive tree roots fused with stone as if the mountain itself had been coaxed into shaping a path. The lantern light flickered across the winding walls, dancing over the knots in the wood and the veins of rock. Each step felt older than anything Cole had ever touched. Older than the cabin, older than the storm, older even than the grief that pressed heavily on his ribs. Ranger's paws made soft thuds on the smooth stone steps. He glanced back now and then, eyes steady, guiding Cole through the dim corridor, as though he had walked it 100 times before. Cole's breath echoed faintly, mixing with the rhythmic hum rising from somewhere deep below. "You feel that?" Cole whispered. "Like the place is alive?" Ranger's ears twitched, but he kept moving. After several tight turns, the staircase opened into a circular landing. A heavy wooden beam crossed overhead, etched with symbols Cole didn't recognize. He stepped forward, holding the lantern up, and stopped. Before him stretched the strangest, most beautiful room he had ever seen. The underground chamber was enormous, at least 50 feet across and 20 feet high, its ceiling a woven lattice of thick roots glowing faintly with trapped warmth. Old industrial lights hung in iron cages, buzzing softly with an electrical hum that sounded decades old but stubbornly reliable. The air was warm enough to feel like early summer, a stark contrast to the frozen storm raging above. Ranger trotted forward, nose low, tail raised as he moved through the cavern with cautious curiosity. Cole felt his heartbeat slow as wonder replaced fear. The place didn't feel threatening. It felt intentional, thoughtful, built with a purpose. Along the cavern walls, shelves carved directly into the stone held rows of old metal lockboxes, wooden crates, and leather-bound journals stacked neatly in rows. Most were labeled with dates ranging back to the 1960s and 70s. A long table filled with old tools and maps stood at the center, partially covered by dust. But it was the object sitting on a far shelf that stopped Cole cold. A small framed photograph. Hannah again, a few years older than the picture in the cabin above. She sat on her grandfather's lap, smiling broadly, holding a wooden toy shaped like the very round door he had just walked through. Cole's grip on the lantern tightened. "She really loved this place, didn't she?" he whispered. He reached out and touched the glass gently, his thumb brushing away a streak of dust. For a moment, he swore he felt her, some echo of her presence, swirling through the chamber with the gentle breeze emanating from hidden vents. Ranger barked once, sharp and urgent, enough to snap Cole back. "What is it?" The dog ran across the chamber to a braided rug, just like the one in the cabin above. Ranger began pawing at the floor near it, whining softly. Cole approached and knelt, pulling the rug aside. Beneath it lay another section of floorboards, older and darker than the rest. A faint rectangular outline was barely visible, and in its center, a recessed iron ring, identical to the trapdoor above. "Another one?" Cole muttered. But this one was locked tight. Warm air seeped from the cracks, carrying the faint scent of old earth and something metallic. Cole tugged on the ring, but the door wouldn't budge. He studied it carefully and noticed a small wooden box nestled beside the wall. Opening it revealed a brass key, and beside it, a note in precise handwriting. "If you are here, you are family. Unlock what you must. E.H." Cole swallowed hard. He inserted the key into a nearly invisible slot on the wooden frame and turned it. A soft click echoed through the chamber, followed by the gentle creak of wood shifting against hinges that sounded impossibly well maintained. The trapdoor lifted. Warm, bright air surged upward, almost like a breath exhaled from the earth. A golden glow spilled out, illuminating Cole's face and reflecting in Ranger's eyes. "What in the world?" Cole whispered. He leaned over the opening, and his breath caught. Below lay a second chamber, smaller but lit by a single hanging lantern that burned with steady brilliance. Inside, wooden shelves held rows of old journals, maps sealed in glass tubes, and a metal case engraved with Elias Hale's initials. A narrow table held a single photograph of Hannah and her grandfather, both looking younger than the cabin itself. Cole climbed down the short ladder, Ranger following carefully. This room felt more intimate, almost sacred. The air was warm and still, humming with quiet meaning. Cole lifted one of the journals. Inside were entries written in neat, meticulous handwriting. Elias Hale's personal thoughts, recorded year after year. As he opened another journal, something slid out and fluttered to the floor. A photograph of Hannah, this time as a teenager, standing proudly beside the round door. On the back was written, "For Cole, when the time comes." His vision blurred. "Hannah, you knew I'd need this place," he whispered. "You knew I'd fall apart." Ranger rested his head on Cole's knee, sensing the shift in energy, the sadness mixed with awe. Cole wiped his eyes and looked around again. The cabin above was remarkable, but this place beneath it, with its preserved books, its humming heat, its untouched memories, it held something deeper, something he wasn't meant to find until now. On the far side of the room stood a locked metal box, much larger than the others. Its hinges were reinforced, its lid carved with Elias Hale's initials and the year 1989. Beside it lay another note. "Open this only when you are ready to understand what you've been entrusted with." Cole didn't reach for it. The weight of the moment already pressed heavily on him, and something inside him whispered that opening this box too soon might crush him. Instead, he sat back on the floor, Ranger curled against his side. The warm light wrapped around them both, easing the cold lodged in Cole's bones. Above him, hidden somewhere in the storm, lay a world that had cast him out. Down here lay a world that had waited for him. He didn't know what the next step would be, but he knew for the first time in months that he wasn't alone. Cole sat in the warm glow of the lower chamber, breathing in air that felt untouched by the outside world. Ranger lay against his leg, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The silence down here wasn't empty. It was comforting, protective, like a heartbeat buried deep inside the mountain. The storm above had become a distant memory, but the hum coming through the walls, That low, steady vibration kept tugging at Cole's attention. It wasn't dangerous, but it was purposeful, almost inviting. Something powered this place, something built decades ago, yet running with impossible consistency. Cole rose, lantern in hand. "Come on, boy," he whispered. "Let's see what else Elias hid down here." Ranger stood and shook out his coat, ears perked forward. He led the way toward a narrow stone archway at the far end of the chamber. Cole hadn't noticed it before, hidden partially behind stacks of crates, its entrance carved with elegant geometric patterns. He moved a crate aside and stepped closer. Beyond the archway was another tunnel, shorter, reinforced with timber beams. Warm air flowed steadily from it, carrying a faint metallic scent. Ranger sniffed the ground and walked in without hesitation. Cole followed, lantern casting shadows against the smooth floor. The tunnel opened into a massive underground hall. Cole froze at the threshold. The space stretched farther than he could have imagined. Dozens of yards wide, illuminated by rows of old industrial lamps hanging from thick cables. Their glow flickered slightly, but held strong, casting a soft golden wash across everything below. And what lay below made Cole's knees weaken. Stacks of metal crates, wooden chests, and sealed containers filled half the chamber, organized in neat rows like some kind of forgotten inventory. Strange artifacts of stone and metal, some resembling tools, others decorative, rested on tables. A single freight elevator sat in one corner, connected to rails embedded in the floor. It looked like a miniature loading bay carved straight into the mountain. But it was the far wall that stole his breath. Racks lined the stone surface from floor to ceiling, each holding long, gleaming ingots, gold bars. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Light reflected off their polished edges, creating a shimmering cascade of warm yellow. Cole stepped back, overwhelmed. "Good Lord," he whispered. Ranger barked sharply, as if urging him forward. Cole approached the nearest stack of metal crates and pried one open. Inside lay more gold bars, wrapped in cloth stamped with government insignias from the Cold War era. On top of the stack, a leather-bound ledger sat neatly aligned. He opened it. The pages were filled with meticulous handwriting. Inventory logs, dates, notes, names of abandoned Cold War projects Elias Hale had evidently rescued from destruction. Tools, rare materials, historical artifacts, and gold bars preserved as an emergency fund for unknown purposes. Cole kept reading until one line made him stop. "To be entrusted only to my granddaughter, Hannah, and to the one she chooses as her partner. If found by anyone else, this place must remain hidden." Cole's breath hitched. "Hannah, you knew," he murmured. "You really knew this existed." Ranger nuzzled his leg, sensing the emotional shift. Cole rubbed the dog's head, grounding himself against the rising swirl of grief and disbelief. He walked deeper into the chamber, lantern light catching on old machinery, generators, air filtration units, and heating systems that looked decades old but impeccably maintained. The hum he'd been hearing came from a large cylindrical machine near the back wall. A thick cable connected it to the overhead lighting system. Cole brushed dust from the machine's panel. Hale Thermal Core Model 02, 1985 prototype. Do not remove from sight. "This cabin, it's more than a hideaway," Cole whispered. "It's a legacy." He took a slow breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Wonder, sadness, confusion, awe. He had seen military bunkers, improvised shelters, high-security facilities overseas, but nothing like this. Nothing built with such care, such heart, such secrecy. Ranger suddenly growled. Cole snapped to alert, lantern raised. "What is it?" The dog stood rigid, fur bristling, staring toward a dark corner of the hall. Cole followed Ranger's gaze and saw a thick tarp covering something large, something shaped like a desk or table. He approached carefully, Ranger at his side. Cole lifted the tarp. Underneath sat a long wooden writing desk, polished and lovingly maintained. On it rested a sealed envelope, yellowed with age but untouched by moisture. Across the front, in elegant cursive, was written, "For Cole Matthews." Cole staggered back a step. His throat tightened, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. Ranger pressed against him, sensing the emotional blow. Cole reached out with trembling hands, lifting the envelope as though it might crumble. The wax seal was unbroken. He slid a finger beneath it and carefully peeled it open. Inside was a letter, written in the same precise handwriting he'd seen in the ledger. "Cole, if you are reading this, then my granddaughter trusted you. I may not live to see the measure of the man you are, but Hannah saw it clearly. She chose you, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. This place belongs to those who protect, not those who take." Elias Hale. Cole lowered the letter, eyes burning. "Hannah, you were planning all of this," he whispered. "You wanted me to find it. You wanted me to keep it safe." Ranger rested his head on Cole's thigh, grounding him again with quiet loyalty. Cole folded the letter back into its envelope and held it close, to his chest. For the first time since Hannah's death, the crushing loneliness he had carried began to crack. Not with pain, but with clarity. He looked around the chamber once more. The gold, the crates, the journals, the machinery, the warmth. Elias Hale hadn't just built a bunker. He had built a sanctuary, a legacy, something meant for his granddaughter and the man she trusted most. Cole exhaled slowly. "I'll protect it," he said softly. "I'll protect everything you left behind." Ranger barked once, sharp and affirming. Cole turned toward the stairway leading back to the upper cabin. He didn't know what the world outside was doing, or how long the storm would last, or what challenges waited for him now that he held something people would kill to possess. But he knew this: he wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not until he understood exactly what he had inherited. And not until he honored the woman who led him here. Cole climbed back into the smaller, warmer chamber, the lantern flame swaying with every step. The envelope from Elias Hale felt heavier in his hand now, as though the truth inside had weight beyond ink and paper. Ranger stayed close, padding silently along the smooth stone floor. The dog's presence grounded Cole, kept him from sinking back into the storm of grief that always waited at the edge of his thoughts. He set the lantern on the narrow wooden table and sat on the bench carved from a single slab of timber. The envelope crackled softly as he opened it again. But this time, another folded sheet slipped out from behind Elias's letter, one he hadn't noticed before. The handwriting on it struck him like a punch to the chest. It was Hannah's. Cole froze, breath caught halfway in his lungs. Ranger lifted his head, sensing the sudden shift. With trembling hands, Cole unfolded the page. "Cole, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to bring you here myself. I'm sorry. I wanted to show you this place when the time was right. When you were healed. When I was sure we were ready. Grandpa trusted you long before he ever met you. I showed him your letters during your second deployment. I told him you were the man I wanted to build a life with." Cole shut his eyes, pain flaring deep behind them. Hannah had never told him that. She was always private about her past, about her family. Yet she had shared him, his hopes, his doubts, his dreams, with the man who built this sanctuary. He forced himself to read on. "My parents will never understand you the way Grandpa did. They care about power, appearances, money, not the things that matter, not the things that make a man good. That's why this place is meant for you. If anything happens to me, I need you to hear this. You deserved a better life than the one the world gave you, and I loved you with all the strength I had left." The words blurred. Cole lowered the letter, pressing the back of his hand to his mouth as a quiet, raw sob escaped him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, shaking from the inside out. Ranger whined and rested his head on Cole's lap. Cole stroked the dog's ears with trembling fingers. "I wasn't ready for this," he whispered. "I'm still not." But he kept reading. One day people might come looking for this place. People who believe everything can be bought or stolen. Please don't let them take what Grandpa protected. You know better than anyone what happens when dangerous people get their hands on things they were never meant to control. That's why I trust you. Hannah. Cole lowered the letter slowly. It felt like Hannah had stepped into the room, whispering her truth across time, over the gulf of her death. The warmth of the chamber started to blur around him, replaced by memories, her laughter echoing in their kitchen, her hand woven through Ranger's fur, the way she looked at him with quiet certainty even on his darkest days. For the first time since she died, the grief didn't break him apart. It settled differently, heavy but stabilizing, painful but purposeful. "Hannah," Cole whispered, "I won't fail you." He folded her letter as gently as one might handle a fragile keepsake and tucked it back into the envelope with Elias's note. When he rose, something inside him felt clearer, like the trembling line inside his chest had begun to steady. Ranger suddenly stiffened, ears snapping upright. He turned toward the staircase leading back to the cabin. "You hear something?" Cole asked. The dog didn't bark, didn't move, but he stayed locked onto the stairs with alert, rigid focus. Cole extinguished the lantern instinctively. For a moment, there was only darkness and breathing, his and Ranger's. Then, faintly, from the cabin above, he heard it too. A soft crunch, snow shifting, footsteps. Cole's heart stuttered. No one should have been able to reach this place in the storm. No one should have known about the cabin at all, except Hannah, Elias, and now Cole. Ranger growled under his breath. Cole whispered, "Stay low," and the dog obeyed immediately. He crept toward the ladder, careful not to make a sound. The warm cavern air met the colder draft leaking down from the cabin, carrying the unmistakable rhythm of movement. Slow, cautious, deliberate. Someone was inside the cabin. Cole pressed his back against the stone wall, listening. Another footstep. Then another. Soft. Measured. Looking around. Or searching for something. Cole's pulse sharpened. Military training rushing back like an instinctive tide. The chamber, the warmth, the grief, they all fell away, replaced by something colder, clearer. Whoever was up there wasn't lost. They weren't seeking shelter. They had found the cabin on purpose. Ranger's growl deepened, barely controlled. Cole whispered, steady and quiet, "With me." He climbed the ladder slowly, muscles coiled, breath held. Ranger stayed directly behind him, silent but ready. At the top of the ladder, Cole paused, hand near the trapdoor but not touching it. A shadow moved across the floorboards above. Cole froze. Someone was standing right over them. The wooden floor above groaned softly under shifting weight. A silhouette passed across the faint light seeping through the trapdoor seams, stretching and shrinking with each slow step. Ranger pressed against Cole's back, muscles taut, breath silent. The dog's instincts mirrored his own. Danger was close, too close. Cole didn't move. He breathed through his nose, shallow and steady. Years of SEAL training taught him how to read movement by sound, and whoever was up there wasn't wandering aimlessly. They were pacing, scanning, searching. The steps were measured, deliberate, scraping faintly against the wooden planks. Someone was looking for something, or someone. The storm outside howled against the round door, rattling the hinges. It masked some noises but amplified others, like the faint click of something metallic being set on the table near the hearth. A flashlight? A tool? A weapon? Cole couldn't be sure. Ranger's ears twitched. Cole placed a steadying hand on the dog's shoulder, signaling silence. He leaned closer to the seam in the trapdoor, angling himself just enough to catch distorted glimpses through the cracks. A shadow paused directly above them. Cole's pulse hammered. After several long seconds, the shadow moved again, but this time toward the round door. The latch clicked softly, followed by the low groan of hinges under pressure. Cold wind blasted into the cabin. That meant only one thing. Whoever had opened the door had just let someone else inside. Cole's stomach tightened. Two voices, muffled but close, exchanged words. He couldn't hear the sentences clearly, only tones. Urgent, frustrated, impatient. A boot scuffed near the wall. Something scraped across the wooden floor, maybe a drawer being opened or furniture being shifted. Ranger growled low. Cole whispered, "Easy. We don't engage unless we have to." He listened again. One of the intruders moved toward the window. Glass fogged, then cleared as a hand wiped across it. Cole heard one of them mutter something like, "Truck's here." He didn't get far. Cole's breath caught. They had found his pickup. They had tracked him through the storm. Judith's informants. It had to be. Only someone desperate to take everything Hannah's family had lost would chase him into a blizzard strong enough to close major highways. Cole clenched his jaw. "She sent them," he whispered to Ranger. "Judith didn't stop with throwing us out." The two men inside the cabin continued their search. One crossed the room, boots thudding near the rug that had previously covered the hidden trapdoor. The footsteps stopped directly above Cole's head. Ranger stiffened. Cole pressed both hands against the trapdoor from beneath, not to open it, but to brace it in case someone tested the floor. The intruder paced in a small circle, muttering under his breath. Cole couldn't catch the words, but he recognized the tone, annoyed, suspicious, on edge. Then the footsteps moved again, fading toward the hall. Cole exhaled softly. "They don't know about this room," he whispered. Ranger leaned his head against Cole's knee. The dog understood. This was their advantage. Suddenly, headlights swept across the frosted windows, casting long beams inside the cabin. The newcomers at the door turned sharply toward the light. Vehicles were pulling up outside. More than one. More voices. More doors slamming. More boots crunching in the snow. Cole's nerves tightened like coiled wire. 3 men now. Maybe 4. He wouldn't survive an ambush if they discovered the passage. Not in these conditions. And Ranger, brave as he was, couldn't take on armed intruders. Cole needed to think. He crawled down from the ladder, motioning for Ranger to follow. They moved into the shadows of the lower chamber, keeping close to the curved wall. Cole extinguished the lantern completely, leaving them in warm, absolute darkness lit only by faint glow strips embedded in the ceiling roots. Above, heavy footsteps echoed again. The men were spreading out, checking the kitchen, moving chairs, lifting furniture, scanning for hidden compartments. Their tone shifted. One said, "She swore he'd come here. There's something worth finding. Spread out." She. Judith. Cole's jaw tightened. She had waited only hours after throwing him out before sending a team to track him. She didn't just want him gone. She wanted Elias Hale's property and legacy. Ranger let out a soft, rumbling growl. Cole whispered, "They're not getting anything. Not this cabin. Not the vault. Not the truth." He scanned the chamber for options. The crates, the tunnels, the second trapdoor, all too risky. If Cole made noise, the men would hear. Then he remembered something Elias had mentioned in one of the journals. A rear exit carved into the mountain, hidden behind the old racks. Cole crouched and moved toward the far wall where stacks of journals and metal chests partially hid a wooden panel. Ranger followed, stepping carefully. Cole ran his hand along the wall until he found a recessed handle. He pulled lightly. A narrow wooden door cracked open, revealing a pitch-black tunnel descending into darkness, and fresh, cold air drifting from somewhere far below. An escape route, just like Elias had designed. Cole turned to Ranger. "We go quiet. We go fast." Ranger licked his hand once, ready. Just as they stepped into the passage, a voice from above shouted, "Found something! He's here somewhere!" Ranger stiffened. Cole whispered, "Move!" Boots thundered across the cabin floor as the intruders began tearing the place apart. Cole pulled the hidden door shut behind him, sealing them in darkness. He didn't know where the tunnel led. He didn't know how long the intruders would stay. But he knew this: everything had changed, and the fight for Hannah's legacy had just begun. The narrow escape tunnel sloped downward at a steep angle, the cold air cutting across Cole's face as he moved. His boots scraped softly on the stone floor. Ranger stayed close beside him, stepping with perfect silence, his body low and alert. Behind them, faint echoes traveled from the cabin above. Shouts, footsteps, furniture overturning. The intruders were tearing the place apart, desperate to find whatever Judith had sent them to retrieve. Cole paused at a bend in the tunnel. He pressed his palm to the wall, grounding himself, steadying his breath. The storm outside rumbled like a living beast, wind carving its anger into the mountain. Snow blew through a small vent in the ceiling, dusting Cole's gloves. He leaned closer to Ranger. "We need to get behind them. See how many we're facing." They kept moving. The tunnel widened finally, opening into a small cave glowing faintly from a lantern Elias Hale had installed decades earlier. The old engineer had thought of everything: heat, escape, and even light, where the mountain swallowed all natural glow. Cole set the lantern higher, adjusting the wick for a dim flame. He didn't need brightness, just enough to orient himself. Ahead of them, a second passage curved upward toward the outside. Ranger sniffed the entrance, ears pricked. The dog's tail was stiff, signaling danger near. Cole adjusted his pack strap and moved upward quietly until he could see daylight. Dim, storm-muted, but present. He crouched behind a boulder and peered out. The cabin sat only 30 yards away, half buried in snow, its round door wide open. The blizzard raged harder now, swirling white sheets through the clearing. Headlights cut across the storm, 2 trucks parked at angles, their engines idling, exhaust drifting into the air like ghosts. 4 men. 2 inside the cabin, 2 outside, scanning the tree line. Judith hadn't sent amateurs. Their postures alone gave them away. Disciplined, armed, practiced. Cole recognized the way they held their shoulders, the way they checked their surroundings. These weren't hired thugs from town. They were private contractors, people who'd done this before. His jaw clenched. "It's getting worse before it gets better," he whispered. Ranger huffed quietly, pressing closer to the entrance, ready for orders. Cole closed his eyes, gathering himself. He wasn't here to kill anyone. That wasn't the mission, not anymore. His goal was simple: survive, protect the cabin, and shield the truth Elias had left behind. A gust of wind roared past the cave, drowning out footsteps. Cole seized the moment. "Come on," he whispered. "We move now." They exited the tunnel, staying low to the ground. Ranger moved ahead, a silent shadow against the snow. Cole followed, keeping his body behind the larger boulders that dotted the clearing. The men outside paced in rigid lines, scanning but not truly seeing through the blowing curtain of snow. One of them turned toward the woods, and Ranger froze instantly, dropping flat into the snow. Cole mirrored him. The man looked for several seconds, squinting, then turned away. Cole tapped the dog twice. Go. Ranger crawled toward the cabin's rear corner, slipping into the blind spot beneath a jutting rock overhang. Cole followed, inch by inch. When they reached the cabin wall, Cole pressed his back against it, chest heaving. Their tracks would vanish in seconds beneath the storm. They had that advantage. He peered inside through a gap in the window frame. Two men stood near the trapdoor rug, one of them holding a crowbar. The other pointed toward the floor. "It's here," he shouted. "Something underneath." Cole's heart lurched. They were close. Too close. If they broke through, the secret chambers would be exposed. He whispered, "Not happening." Ranger stiffened beside him, muscles bunching beneath his coat. Cole tapped his chest twice, then pointed toward the far truck. Ranger understood immediately. He'd been trained for years to read silent commands. He lowered his body and slipped away from the cabin, moving fast but silent through the snow. Cole scanned the cabin again. The men inside had moved a small wooden bench and were positioning the crowbar beneath the floorboard's edge. Seconds. Cole had seconds to stop this. He darted to the backside of the cabin and slipped inside through a cracked window. The cold hit his face first, then the noise. The men didn't hear him over the storm howling through the open door. Cole moved fast. He crossed to the stove, grabbed the heavy iron poker leaning beside it, and approached from behind. The man with the crowbar pried upward. The floorboard cracked. Cole struck, not at the man, but at the crowbar itself. The iron bar flew across the room, clattering against the far wall. The man stumbled back in shock. "What the?" Cole stepped forward, voice low but commanding. "You're done. Get out." The second man reached for a weapon at his side, but Ranger arrived first, bursting through the front doorway, barreling across the floor. He hit the man square in the chest, knocking him down. The man's weapon skidded across the floorboards. The first intruder lunged, swinging wildly. Cole dodged, grabbed his arm, and used the man's own momentum to send him crashing into the table. Cole pinned him with a knee, but didn't strike further. The second man fought under Ranger, but couldn't break free. The dog's training and weight held him firmly. Outside, the two guards noticed the commotion. "Inside! Move!" Cole heard them charging through the snow. He grabbed the trapdoor ring, swung it open, and shouted, "Ranger, down!" Ranger released the intruder and leapt toward Cole. Cole pushed the dog into the opening and dropped down after him, gripping the ladder. Gunfire. Cracked overhead. Non-lethal warning shots. Rubber rounds or suppressed blanks meant to intimidate rather than kill. The floorboards splintered above him as Cole yanked the trapdoor shut. It sealed just as the intruders crashed into the cabin. Darkness swallowed them. Ranger pressed against Cole's side, trembling with adrenaline, but ready. In the faint glow of the cavern lights below, Cole whispered, "This is our stand now, and we're not losing it." He climbed the rest of the way down, the sound of intruders pounding on the trapdoor echoing above. Hale's Haven was under siege, but Cole Matthews wasn't surrendering this mountain. Not now. Not ever. Cole stayed crouched beneath the sealed trapdoor, listening as boots hammered the floorboards above. Ranger stood beside him, head lifted, ears pointed toward the ceiling, every muscle tight with alertness. The pounding grew louder, then shifted. Muffled voices barked orders, furniture scraped across wood, someone shouted that they'd find another way in. Cole rubbed Ranger's flank. "We've got minutes, maybe less." He lowered himself into the chamber and moved quickly toward the far wall, where Elias Hale had built a narrow service stairway that led halfway up the mountain slope. He'd memorized the emergency routes during his first night here, but now he saw them differently, not as quirky old engineering projects, but as an elder's careful protection. Elias must have known his family would come one day. "Come on," Cole whispered. Ranger followed as he climbed the stone steps. The air grew colder as they ascended, and the storm rumbled louder. At the top, a small iron hatch sat flush with the mountainside, hidden behind a rock ledge. Cole pushed it open just an inch, enough to see the glow of headlights below. 2 more vehicles. Judith had sent reinforcements. Cole exhaled slowly. He needed to buy time, not wage a war. And he needed help, real help, someone who understood both the law and the fight. He pulled his satellite phone from his coat pocket and hit the number he'd avoided calling for months. Logan Price, his old SEAL teammate, now a sheriff in a nearby county, one of the few people Cole trusted to see him at his worst. The line rang twice. A familiar voice answered, low and steady. "Cole, you all right?" "No," Cole said honestly. "I need you. At Hales Haven. Bring deputies. And come ready." Logan didn't ask for explanations. "On my way." Cole clicked the phone off and tucked it away. Below them, the men inside the cabin began slamming something heavy into the trapdoor, testing its strength. Ranger growled softly. "Yeah," Cole murmured. "I feel the same." He led Ranger back into the chamber. They took cover behind a row of stacked crates filled with Elias's sealed documents. Dust floated through the air like drifting snowflakes. The lights hummed. Cole found himself listening for every vibration above them, every creak, every thud. His heart beat harder than it had during combat. He tried to steady his breathing, reminding himself of the truth. This wasn't Afghanistan. These weren't soldiers. These were people chasing greed, and Hannah's legacy was the price. Minutes stretched. Then, voices outside, tires crunching, engines shutting off. Logan Price had arrived. The shouts changed tone. The intruders inside the cabin scurried to the door. Cole heard Logan's unmistakable voice. "Sheriff's Department, step outside with your hands where I can see them." A pause. Then chaos. The cabin erupted with noise. Men running, something heavy crashing. One man tried to escape through the side door, but was immediately ordered to the ground. Cole could hear the cold authority in Logan's commands, the kind that left no room for argument. A final slam echoed through the chamber, the front door thrown open. Boots thudded. Someone shouted they were clear. Cole climbed the ladder and pushed the trapdoor carefully. It opened easily now. The men had abandoned their attempt to break in. Snow blew into the cabin through the open front door. Logan stood at the threshold, a powerful silhouette against flashing emergency lights. Deputies were lining the intruders along the porch, hands cuffed, heads down. Judith's hired team was finished. Logan spotted Cole and exhaled. "You look like hell." Cole stepped fully into the cabin. "You should see the other guys." Logan approached, his expression shifting from humor to concern. "Cole, you're bleeding." Cole touched his forehead. It was cut from where debris had fallen during the break-in. He hadn't even noticed, but Ranger had. The dog pressed against Cole's leg, worried. "I'm okay," Cole said, "but they might not stop." Logan nodded. "Then tell me everything." They sat at the small wooden table while deputies finished clearing the property. Cole told him about Elias Hale, the secret chamber, the will, the letter, Judith's obsession, the fortune hidden below. Logan listened without interrupting, his eyes narrowing at all the right moments. When Cole finished, Logan leaned back. "Judith Carrington planned to use your PTSD against you." Cole stared at him. "How?" Logan's voice hardened. "She filed a preliminary petition with the county last week. Claimed you were mentally unstable, unpredictable, potentially dangerous. If the judge approved it, she could have taken control of any property tied to Hannah's estate." Cole felt his stomach twist. "She wanted to paint me as unfit." "She wanted legal control," Logan corrected. "This wasn't personal, it was financial." Cole laughed bitterly. "Feels personal." Ranger looked up at him with soft eyes. sensing his pain. Logan placed a hand on Cole's shoulder. Listen to me. You're not unstable. You're not broken. You're a man who lost his wife and got buried in grief. That doesn't make you unfit. It makes you human. Cole's throat tightened. Logan continued, voice steady. But we have what we need to shut her down. The break-in, the hired contractors, the petition she filed. This is a legal nightmare for her now. Cole looked toward the cabin door, the storm still raging beyond it. The fight wasn't over, but it had shifted. For the first time since Hannah's death, he wasn't fighting alone. Ranger nudged his hand gently, as if saying the same thing. You're right, Cole said quietly. Logan stood. I'll file charges and secure the perimeter. You rest, and tomorrow, we take this to court. Cole nodded, exhaustion pulling at him. He knelt beside Ranger, running his hand along the dog's fur. We're going to finish this, he whispered. For Hannah. Outside, the storm continued to howl, but inside the cabin, for the first time in a long while, Cole felt grounded. Not safe, not finished, but grounded. And he finally knew the truth. Judith Carrington had underestimated the wrong man and the wrong dog. By sunrise, the storm began to break, slowly, like a curtain being pulled open over the Rocky Mountains. The snowdrifts around Hale's Haven glowed pink in the early light. Everything looked untouched, peaceful, pristine. But Cole Matthews knew peace was never that simple. Inside the cabin, the wood stove crackled, filling the round room with warmth. Ranger slept at Cole's feet, wrapped in a soft blanket Logan had brought from his truck. The dog's breathing was steady but shallow, still recovering from blood loss. Cole kept his hand resting on Ranger's shoulder, grounding himself in the animal's heartbeat. Hang in there, buddy, Cole whispered. We're almost through the worst of it. Ranger's ears twitched in response. Logan stepped in from the porch, brushing snow from his coat. Ambulance took the last of Judith's hirelings, none serious injuries. The deputies finished their statements. Cole nodded, grateful. And the charges? He asked. Logan exhaled. Breaking and entering, trespassing, intimidation, conspiracy, plenty to keep the DA busy. Cole leaned back, exhaustion leaking into his bones. But none of that stops Judith. That's where your lawyer comes in, Logan said. She's on her way. As if on cue, a car engine rumbled up the plowed path, tires crunching over fresh snow. A silver SUV stopped in front of the cabin. Maria Dawson, the mountain town attorney Logan recommended, stepped out. Petite, sharp-featured, full of purpose, like someone who rarely lost fights. She walked straight toward Cole and extended her hand. Mr. Matthews, I've already reviewed the documents Sheriff Price emailed me. You have a stronger case than you realize. Cole shook her hand. I don't want to fight. I just want Hannah's truth protected. Maria smiled thinly. Then you do want to fight. But the good news is, you'll win it. They sat around the wooden table. Ranger lifted his head weakly when Maria approached, then relaxed again as she knelt to scratch behind his ears. You've been through a lot, haven't you? She murmured to the dog. Cole felt something tighten in his throat. People like Judith never understood dogs, never understood loyalty. But people like Maria did. Maria took out a folder thick with legal forms, stamped documents, and copies of Elias Hale's original will. Let me make this simple, she said. Elias Hale transferred this land and all the assets beneath it directly to Hannah. His estate bypassed her parents entirely. That is airtight. Cole nodded. And when Hannah died? As her legal husband, every asset transfers to you, unless there's a contestable will. There isn't, Cole said. Exactly. She flipped another page. Judith's petition to declare you unstable will never hold. Not after last night. Her actions undermine every claim she made. Courts don't take kindly to manipulation. Cole stared at the fire, jaw set. They tried to ruin my name. Then we ruined their case, Maria replied calmly. She opened another document, one Cole hadn't seen before. It bore Hannah's handwriting. What's that? Cole whispered. Hannah signed this at a clinic appointment 2 years ago, Maria said gently. It names you as her sole emergency beneficiary and durable power of attorney. This reinforces your standing. Cole took the document carefully, swallowing the ache rising in his chest. Hannah had trusted him, even when he didn't trust himself. Maria straightened her papers. We'll file everything this afternoon and request an emergency injunction preventing Judith from stepping within a mile of this property. After that, we'll proceed with probate. And how long until there's a ruling? Cole asked. Judging by the evidence in Sheriff Price's report? Maria smiled. Not long. The hearing was held 3 days later in the small courthouse of Barrett County. Cole wore the only clean clothes he had. Logan stood beside him in uniform. Ranger, still healing, walked slowly but proudly at Cole's heel, wearing a service vest Logan loaned him. Judith Carrington arrived with 3 lawyers and an expression that could have frosted glass. When her eyes met Cole's, she didn't see grief, truth, or the man her daughter loved. She saw the fortune she believed belonged to her. The judge, a gray-haired woman with steady eyes, began the session. Judith's attorneys argued instability, unfitness, erratic veteran behavior. They spoke of PTSD like it was a weapon rather than a wound. Cole listened quietly, giving no reaction. Then it was Maria's turn. She rose slowly, walked to the center of the courtroom, and laid out her evidence with the precision of a surgeon. Elias Hale's will, the land deed, the original transfer papers, the sealed letter to Cole, Hannah's legal designation naming Cole as her sole heir, the sheriff's report of the forced entry, each document stacked atop the last, like bricks building a wall Judith couldn't climb. And finally, Your Honor, Maria said, I present Elias Hale's own written statement explaining why he bypassed the Carrington family. Judith's face tightened. Maria handed the judge the letter. The silence stretched as the judge read. Then she set the letter down and looked directly at Judith. Mrs. Carrington, she said, you have no legal claim. None. Judith inhaled sharply. The property, the estate, and all associated assets belong solely to Cole Matthews as the lawful heir of Hannah Hale Matthews. The gavel struck. Judith's lawyers froze. Judith stared at the judge as if reality itself had betrayed her. Cole closed his eyes once, just once, before Ranger pushed his head into Cole's leg. Logan grinned and whispered, Told you. Maria packed her papers calmly. Congratulations, Mr. Matthews. You now legally own everything Elias Hale intended for you. Cole knelt beside Ranger, voice soft. We did it, buddy. Ranger's tail thumped gently. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, asking questions Cole didn't answer. Logan blocked them while Cole helped Ranger into the SUV. For the first time since the night Hannah died, Cole felt direction. He felt purpose. Not the purpose of a soldier following orders, but the purpose of a man building something new. For himself. For other veterans. For the dog who refused to leave his side. As the mountain wind swept over him, Cole looked toward the distant ridge where a round door waited. Hannah had led him there. Elias had trusted him with it. And now, finally, Cole had the right to protect it. The legacy was his, and he intended to honor it with everything he had left. Spring arrived slowly in the Rockies, melting the deep winter that had swallowed Hale's Haven months before. The world around the cabin transformed, snow giving way to soft earth, pine needles glowing deep green, streams running clearer and stronger with the thaw. The round wooden door looked less like a hiding place now, and more like a beginning. Cole stood outside that door at sunrise, Ranger at his side, both of them watching the pink light spill across the ridge. The dog's coat had fully grown back around the wound on his flank, the scar barely visible under thick fur. He seemed stronger now, more confident, more at peace. Cole felt the same way. "Feels different now," Cole murmured. Ranger leaned lightly against his leg, as if agreeing. Cole's breath clouded in the cool morning air. But unlike the night he arrived, shivering in the storm, the cold felt clean now, sharp but welcome, a reminder of how far he'd come. Behind them, the cabin had transformed. Local builders, veterans themselves, had spent months working under Cole's direction. They reinforced the structure, installed discreet plumbing, updated the electrical system without disturbing Elias's original craftsmanship. Every curve, every beam, every stone remained untouched in spirit. It was still a Hobbit home, still Elias's dream, still Hannah's childhood sanctuary. But now it was something more. Cole walked down the short stone path toward the newly built welcome cabin, a small outpost where arriving guests would meet volunteers, sign in, or simply take a moment to breathe before stepping onto the retreat grounds. A wooden sign hung above the door. Hail Haven Retreat. For veterans and their K-9 partners. The first group was arriving today. Cole paused at the door, listening to the quiet hum of morning. Birds chattered in the treetops. Wind sifted through the pines. Somewhere far down the valley, an engine approached slowly, respectfully, as if the mountain itself demanded it. Cole inhaled deeply. Healing was never quick, never simple. He'd spent years fighting enemies he could see, and years fighting the ones he couldn't. But building this place, designing a sanctuary for men and dogs who carried what he carried, felt like stitching some of those wounds shut. He glanced at Ranger. "You ready to help them the way you helped me?" Ranger wagged his tail once, steady and sure. The SUV came into view. Logan Price stepped out first, holding a small box under one arm. Two veterans followed behind him, one leaning heavily on a cane, the other coaxing a skittish German shepherd out of the back seat. Cole walked toward them. Logan grinned. "You didn't tell me it'd look this good." "You didn't tell me you were bringing gifts," Cole replied, eyeing the box. Logan handed it to him. "From the county. Formal recognition for, well, everything. And a little something from the sheriff's office." Cole opened it. Inside lay a polished wooden plaque engraved with the county seal. "For courage, integrity, and service beyond duty, presented to Cole Matthews." And beneath it, a metal nameplate for Ranger. Ranger, K-9 Valor. Cole swallowed hard. Ranger stepped closer, touching his nose to the plaque as if sensing its meaning. Logan cleared his throat. "You earned it, brother." Cole nodded, voice rough. "We earned it." The two veterans drew closer. One in his early 40s, pale and tense, carrying invisible burdens. The other younger, but with hollow eyes that spoke of battles still raging inside. Cole stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome to Hale's Haven," he said gently. "You're safe here." The younger man nodded, his dog pressing against his leg. "This is Shadow," the veteran said. "He hasn't been the same since the blast." Cole knelt in front of the skittish shepherd. Ranger stepped beside him, lowering his head in a calm, gentle greeting. Shadow hesitated, then touched noses with Ranger, just briefly, but enough to shift something in the air. The veteran's shoulders loosened. "I've never seen him go near another dog." Cole offered a small smile. "Ranger has that effect. He helped me more than I can explain." Logan murmured, "You built something here, Cole. Something real." Cole looked around, at the curved cabin door glowing in the morning light, at the winding forest trails they'd cleared for therapy walks, at the small gathering of people who had come because they needed hope. "I didn't build it," Cole said quietly. "Elias started it. Hannah led me to it. Ranger kept me alive long enough to see it." He looked down at his dog, eyes soft. "And now we carry it forward." As the group moved toward the retreat center, Cole remained still for a moment, letting the peace sink in. He knew struggles would come again. Quiet nights where memories returned. Mornings where the world felt heavier than he could lift. He'd seen too much, lost too much for that to vanish. But now he didn't have to fight alone. Ranger nudged his hand, pulling him back into the present. Cole smiled and scratched behind the dog's ears. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's go help them find their footing." Together they walked toward the heart of Hale's Haven, the round door waiting open like a welcome. The mountain wind swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of pine, snowmelt, and something bright, something hopeful. For the first time since Hannah's death, Cole felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was living. Ranger paced beside him, head high, tail steady, ready for whatever lay ahead. And behind them, the cabin, Elias's haven, Hannah's memory, Cole's new beginning, glowed warmly against the rugged Colorado skyline. A home forged from grief, a sanctuary born from loyalty, a legacy protected by a seal and his dog. Nothing and no one would ever take that from them again. If you believe justice still matters in this country, drop a simple yes in the comments. And if stories like this remind you of the strength we stand for out here in the American mountains, go ahead and subscribe. We've got more true grit ranch and justice tales coming your way.